Welcome to Halftime, a show dedicated to equipping and inspiring people to accomplish what God has prepared them for. I'm Doug Piper, and I'm a Halftime alumni, and I want to thank you so much for joining us. Halftime is focused on helping you create more meaning, joy, and impact in your life. So if you're feeling just a bit that way, or maybe you know someone that's in that season, you can find out more by going to halftime.org. That's HALFTIME.org. I want to thank everyone for joining tonight, and please continue the conversation by asking questions in the Ask a Question links right down there in the center of the screen. Also, and we'll answer those in the second half of our program. Also, share where you're viewing us from there in the chat. It's always fun to see where you're viewing us from, and maybe if you're having a coffee or a tea, maybe what you're having. So today we're discussing celebrating, a key to finishing well. I'm going to bring everybody up on screen here, hopefully successfully. There we go. Excellent. Welcome, gentlemen. Now, today we are joined by Halftime alumni Alan Smith. Alan is more than 10 years into his halftime journey. He's an oil and gas entrepreneur and a member of the All-American Wildcatters, which is kind of that Hall of Fame. Now, when he and Michelle's daughter was born with a hearing loss, they immersed themselves into learning and figuring out how to help. Those efforts would eventually manifest into what is now the Texas Hearing Institute. Alan found this to be his primary piece of calling over the past 10 years. And this month, they opened a brand new $20 million center adjoining the largest medical city in the world, the Texas Medical Center. Now, this will double the number of children that they can serve and the quality of their care. Now, Lloyd is a successful real estate developer, author of 3 books, and the founding partner of Halftime Institute. Welcome, everybody. I hope everyone is well. Now, Lloyd, on this topic, it seems especially difficult to celebrate at the moment. There's so much uncertainty as a result of COVID, the economy, and the election, yet we're going to discuss the importance of celebrating.
Well, yeah, and maybe no more important time, right, Doug, than when things are somewhat challenging and bleak and frustrating around us. Because a celebration from the biblical perspective, it always points our heart to God and to his powerful and kind and ever-present provision in our lives. And, you know, as we prepare in America for Thanksgiving, this is a great time to celebrate with the family, God's blessings in our lives. And I'm not particularly good at this, Doug. I think of a time in 2014 with my partner and I, business partner and I, sold one of our retirement facilities. And I look back at a picture of us standing in front of the building, and we looked a bit grim. And I thought, like, is this the best we could do at celebrating God's blessing in us in this business for 30 years? And many of us that have been blessed with success, we kind of trained our hearts to do a little quick nod to a win in our lives, and then to just get back to working on conquering the next hill. But I believe now, after all these years of coaching people through halftime, that learning how to celebrate well and to really celebrate God's blessings in our lives on a regular basis, including our family, is an important piece to finishing well. And when we attempt to celebrate great milestones, sometimes we don't quite know what that means. Is it just great food and music and some reminiscing, or is there something deeper? And what can we learn from stories like Alan's in this last week as they celebrated this amazing opening? But what I've seen in the Bible about this, and this is an area where Doug and I are learning, and hopefully learning from Alan tonight, is that biblical celebration always turns our hearts to God. And it reminds us and our families, our kids and grandkids, that every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven from our Father, who is the great provider. Doug, Jesus told a famous story, of course, of the prodigal son. And the father was anticipating the return of his son. And so he ran to meet him. And then they threw a celebration. It says there was a great feast and wine and music and dancing and gifts and a lot of emotion. That is a celebration. And he gave us these details, I believe, on purpose, because celebration is important. In fact, it's essential. And if you look at this parable, Jesus, the father said to the older son who was outside complaining about how the father was throwing a party for the son that had been so rebellious. And the father says, but we had to celebrate and be glad. We had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again, was lost and is found. In a world surrounded by death and loss and pain, we must celebrate what God brings: healing, hope, and restoration. It's actually a sweet taste of the home we're longing most to arrive at. I find it interesting, Doug, that when you take a wide sweep through the Bible and just read through the Bible, if you've ever done that in a year, that the whole central theme of history is that something was lost and it's being found. And it's pointing to a figurative celebration that's referred to in Revelation as the marriage supper of the Lamb, the biggest, most high energy, most amazing party ever to be thrown. Now that's the whole sweep throughout the Bible. And so how come I just do this little internal nod when we have a big win in life and then move on? So in this 30 minutes, Doug and I hope to give you a deep dive look under the hood of Alan's journey, his calling, how the Lord's equipped him for it, and then blessed him to imagine if you were able to be part of bringing healing, being the hands and feet of the great healer for little children that can't hear and often have speech problems. Now, I went with Alan and our whole halftime cohort to see the Center for Hearing and Speech. It's now the Texas Hearing Institute. I'll tell you, when you walk into a room and there's 10 or 12 little kids sitting at a table having breakfast, lunch, right, Alan?
Right.
And they look up at us and they talk and they can hear everything we're saying, and they've got these little ocular implants. And I mean, when you walked out of the room, I noticed just tears welling up in your eyes. Eh? Just such a joy.
That's very true, Lloyd.
So what I'd love to do is let's go back to your portfolio. You and I have been on this journey for 12 years. And Alan, I pulled out our file together. Okay. This is how many conversations we've had over those years. And I mean, I consider this one of the privileges of my life, to be part of your journey and to see God using you in such amazing ways. Talk about your portfolio of stuff and how it all plays out now you're deep in your second half.
Well, thanks, Lloyd. And it's a pleasure to be with everyone tonight. And, just eternally grateful, to Lloyd for the journey we've been on, because without him, I would still probably have a bunch of tentacles extending out there where I wasn't able to have the impact because I was too spread out and I wasn't really utilizing my capacity the way that I should. But, we've been very blessed through the years, and especially in the energy business. And, when we built Rockcliff, was able to, again, due to some coaching that I got from Lloyd, is I built it in a very strategic manner. It's got a lot of horsepower, which freed me up and gave me the opportunity to get involved in things where I could really give back, to the kingdom and be more involved in things like the Texas Hearing Institute. So I think as I've gone through the last 15 years, especially, it's become very, very clear that my calling is around those things that we would call visioning or, strategy, because every time that I get asked, sometimes it's not clear at the very inception of that ask, but as I dig into it and as sometimes I accept it and, get even deeper into it, it's just been very clear that all those roles have ended up being visioning and strategy roles. Just to give you a couple of examples, at our church recently, the pastor had been there for some time, inherited the church from another pastor, it became clear that it was time to go through another visioning type project to say, where are we going over the next 10 years? I'd just been asked about that time to get involved, and pretty soon, without even asking, was somehow ended up on the visioning committee. And there was a lot of change that was implemented, and now we're through that, and I'm actually on the other side of it, but still very involved in the governing body. At the Texas Hearing Institute, that's where, as Lloyd mentioned and Doug mentioned, we had a daughter with a severe hearing loss, and they'd asked me to get on the board for a few years before that, and I said, the answer is not no, it's just not now. And then when I felt like I had the capacity, was just about the time I hadn't been there 2 board meetings, and they said, we're ready to sell the property. We need to go through a whole visioning process. We want you to lead it. I'm like, well, there you go. And got it work once again. I had no idea, but here I am. And so that's just been a huge 4-year journey of going through that process, coming up with the true vision, and then realizing it meant we had to raise $20 million, realizing that we needed to partner with a big hospital and children's hospital and a lot of other things. But anyway, long story short, I'm in my 4th year as the chairman, and as Lloyd mentioned, we just celebrated opening the new building with the new CEO in place, and the deal with Texas Children secured. So right there in the middle of the Texas Medical Center. So it's been an incredible journey. We'll talk more about that later. Also have a First Things First group where we get together every Monday morning and have Bible study. Fortunate to have it led by a gentleman named Dwight Edwards, and it's grown a bit over time, and it's really just a great way to start the week, and it's a great time to be with other men. And
now that's something, Alan, that's part of your business, right? You do that at Rockcliff, so it's one way you integrate your faith into your current platform, and these other pieces bolt around the side of it, right?
That's true. It's a good point. Thanks, Lloyd. And then another, a real good friend of mine and I also mentor about 5 to 7 guys a year, younger men, high potential men, a lot of capacity, a lot of horsepower, and just trying to, live life with them, just trying to, hopefully we can keep them from making mistakes we made. And whether it be in marriage, whether it be in life, whether it be in work or children, whatever it may be. So that's a quick summary, Lloyd.
So for those of you watching, if you're shaping up your portfolio for the second half, you don't have to just do one thing, but there's a common theme throughout all of the things that Alan's doing, and that's this vision and strategy. So he has multiple passions doing oil and gas business. It provides a platform and cash flow and credibility. And then this passion coming in their family because of Tiffanys' hearing loss, and then his passion to partner with Carter to mentor young leaders. So that's a great example of a really well-balanced portfolio for your second half. And frankly, Alan could do that for many years to come. So now you've had a lot of wins in life at Texas A&M, Texas Tech. Are those both different? I'm teasing you.
They're both in Texas. You got that part.
Tennis wins. You've built big businesses and sold them before. Getting into the Wildcatter Hall of Fame. I mean, I don't know if you know much about oil and gas, folks, but that's a big deal. I mean, you got a handwritten letter from T. Boone Pickens of all people, right? So did you do some of the same silly stuff I did in the past of just kind of check it and do a little celebration? Or tell me about what have you done in the past about celebrating that may be different from what you're doing now?
Well, on that one, I have to admit, whenever I got asked to be in that, I was incredibly humbled for one. You really almost doubt yourself, and so I wonder if I even deserve to be in this group when you look at the names and the who's who, of leadership and energy through the last literally 50 years. That one's a little bit unique because they always have a big induction ceremony, which has a big celebration, flavor to it. from the get-go. You bring a lot of your family if you're being inducted, which I did, which was really cool. Some of the people that I had grown up in business, I was able to be there with, and really celebrated a lot of those in my acceptance speech. I celebrated a lot of those people who had such a huge impact, on my life and my career. And as y'all know, it's not just I learned this technically. It was a lot of life lessons that came through that. I think there was a lot of discussion amongst our peers at that. What's happened over the past 35 years. Yeah, you're here, but you begin to look back on it and you see God's hand written over some of those roles that you took, that you were confused by why you had to do them, or you were in a city that you really didn't care to be in, quite frankly. God had a plan, and he equipped me. I wouldn't change a thing, as to how that he equipped me with, from the technical to the commercial to the people skills to the relationships. And, it was just very clear that, he had that plan. And just, I think I remember as we were leaving, I told Michelle, my wife, I said, what a blessing to do something that you love doing, that you get paid pretty well to do, and have such great lifelong friendships along the way. And that is one thing that probably everyone doesn't greatly appreciate. The oil and gas community is a very tight community, and there are really deep relationships that get built. And I don't think that was lost on me, so it probably wasn't as good as we should do exactly, Lloyd, but there was some celebrating that went on with that one.
Yeah. And you've done better at celebrating in the past. That's why I wanted to really learn from you. When you sold businesses, you've taken trips with your team, but there's something about this celebration when you think about being on the journey with your family, and Tiffanys' role in it, and the fact that there's scripture verses up in the Texas Hearing Institute. And why did you guys kind of fall in love with this as a family? And then Doug, we're going to cut away in a minute or two to share a quick video of some of the scenes from the Texas Hearing Institute. So talk to us about that journey as a family of just deciding this is where you're going to double down, and what that's meant to the family.
Well, as you mentioned, probably didn't realize that we had such a passion for it day one, because this is a part, anytime I tell the story, it's hard to hold it all together, because when you find out, and they kind of tell you, look, it's very normal for them not to pass the first hearing test, and then you have to do additional testing. And finally it came back like she is profoundly deaf. And when you get that diagnosis, and we have hope eternal, but when you feel that sense of lack of hope for your daughter, and what does that mean for her life? And, one of my oil and gas friends who was on the board of the time, the Center for Hearing and Speech, and it said, you got to come see us. Hopefully we can help you. And we came, and they said, based on your diagnosis, the doctors didn't tell us this, but they said, based on your diagnosis, we think there is a really good chance that we can put your daughter into a hearing world. Now you have to make that decision. You have to decide whether you really want her to be in the hearing world, or you prefer her be in the deaf community. And we said, look, it's a no-brainer. If we think we can help her, get the gift of sound, then we absolutely want to do that. And we walked out of there with a newfound hope. We went in dejected, and we came out with hope. And I think, as I reflected on that over time, when you're in the middle of the journey, you're just sort of marching, trying to get things done. But as we reflected on that, I really recognized that what the Texas Hearing Institute really offers people is hope. And I've thought about this more, Lloyd, since we discussed this, but I think one of the biggest celebrations that we did when they, we obviously gave a significant gift, and they asked us, what would you like to put your name in lights or whatever? And we're like, no, it's not really us. We don't really do it that way. And I thought a lot about it, and I said, I want to create this hope room. And I talked to my wife about it. Of course, she's a lot more creative than me. So she said, how about we call it Tiffanys Haven of Hope? And so we were able to create this room in the architectural design of the building that when someone has that diagnosis and they can come in, to our center there, to our institute, and find hope. And I put a little bit of icing on the cake because I wanted I wanted to be able to tell people about the kingdom through that story. And so the way we ended up doing it is we asked our girls and asked Tiffany, of course, like what verse would you put on the wall? If you could put a big verse on the wall, what would you put? And believe it or not, I knew that's why it was the right verse, because two of the three of us said, let's put up Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in a future.
That's sweet.
And so our goal was not only to give them hope that their child would hear, but if they, when people are down and out is when they're most vulnerable to hear the gospel. And I think most of you know that. So this was just an opportunity to give them not only hope that their child would hear, but hopefully give them eternal hope. And so, I think you might get to see, in the video that room, and we were able to, put that in a cloud and a verse on the wall, and that's something we can celebrate for a long time, Lloyd. Something that will be there, hopefully from now on. And COVID's put a little bit of damper on that because we can't get in that small room with people, but I'm confident we'll come back out of that.
Yeah, and the grand opening couldn't be packed with the hundreds of people that you were expecting before, but you streamed people through for a long time, and they got to see it. And so, Doug, let's cut away to that short video just to give our friends a look at it.
Okay, one moment.
One, when we walked in, really down, really almost depressed that we had a child that had been given a death diagnosis. When you have been personally impacted by hearing loss, which you want to do everything you can to not only help your own daughter, but help as many kids as you can. Our goal here is to not turn anyone away, no matter what the situation is, regardless of their ability to pay, is to be able to see them. It's been a lot of hard work, but it's brought a lot of joy to myself and to those that I've been blessed to work with.
It will change their life forever. It's excited to be a part of making these kids be able to live a normal life.
Alan, just wonderful to hear Tiffany's voice there at the end. And I know a little bit about what that's like. We have a daughter born with short stature, a rare form of dwarfism. And we worked on a treatment for it with doctors for many years. And when it finally came out, we had a big celebration, and they had a video crew here from New York. And I remember our daughter saying, who knows, and she was 14 at the time, who knows, but maybe God allowed me to have this illness so that we as a family could be part of making this medicine available to other people. And when I hear her voice in there, that's a sweet thing. And this is truly part of the celebration. And it means a lot to me, Alan, because I spent the morning with our two grandchildren, and our littlest one is 6 months old, and she's deaf. And you've given me hope. And I put in little hearing aids this morning and a little 6-month-old girl, and try to get them so they don't squeak. And your story and this journey has given me hope. So tell us about what you did that day and what you've been doing. What you did. I think you took the family to dinner and talked about maybe the plan that you'd built in 2016 and how God intervened along the way. Share some of that with us.
Well, as you, first of all, we went to the event, and it was great to tour it with some of the directors there who they cannot wipe the smiles off their face, having access to that kind of a technology and just everything completely upgraded, and walking in with just such pride. The place we had before had been there for 50 years. And so we said, let's go to dinner. We have to celebrate this, And so we went to our favorite, nicest restaurant where you have to get dressed up, and we talked about it a little bit during the day, but that night we just said, why do we do this? What's so important about doing this? And they get it. It's about helping others. It's about it's like the commandment to love others as you love yourself. It is. We talked about that, but Lloyd alluded to it was a journey. Whenever you begin to say, okay, we've got this great piece of property that we own half with the city, and where would be the best place to locate this? Because a lot of these kids with hearing loss have other issues. So getting them closer to the medical center helped with that. We put the property on the market. It sold for a really big number. I thought I could negotiate us a lease back. The guys paid a big number, would not do a lease back. They wanted to get going. And so then, we had to find a home. And I think at that point in time, we had 5 initiatives. We need to get it. We need to cut a deal with the Texas Medical Center where they give you, a ground lease for 50 years for $1 a year. We needed to construct the partnership with Texas Children's so we could have more reach and really marry up what they do well in the hospital setting and what we do in the clinical setting. And we're just a lot more compassionate than they are. And then, we also needed to raise $22.5 million. And we also, needed to design this whole new building. And yes, last but not least, we had to find a temporary home. And a lot of people are like, that's just too much. We're biting off too much here. Every one of those things through relationships on the board or through other relationships. And this whole thing where we ended up at a Houston Independent School District, older school that was not being utilized was just a gift from God, literally, that we were able to retrofit that, live there for a little over a year and a half. I had to literally go see the CEO of Texas Children's because using one of my oil and gas relationships because it was stuck. We couldn't quite get it across the finish line. We finally got that across the finish line. One of the guys on the board was in real estate, worked very closely with the Texas Medical Center. So that was a godsend in him being there and being able to get that done. I forgot to mention, we said, to go to the next level. We had a great director for those past 13 years, but to go to the next level, we were at a point where, a new CEO needed to come in and take us to the next level. And literally through one of Lloyd's relationships as someone who came out of a big firm like Korn Ferry and decided that they wanted to help, charities find leaders, is who we ultimately used and found us a great leader. So when you explain to your children and your family in one setting how that all this had to be pieced together over about a 2-year period, and we did raise $22.5 million. You just had to give God all the glory. I mean, it's just not impossible to be able to pull all that off with the typical resources of a nonprofit and set all those pieces of the puzzle in place right as they needed to be set in place. So I just told them, I said, it's just a great time to celebrate this, and we're going to double the number of kids we can serve. And I think that's just the beginning, quite frankly. So,
Well, doesn't it sound coming from your heart, just like the story in the parable of the prodigal son, when the father says, but we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. In other words, it's amazing. And you as a family are the hands and feet of the great healer. Now, there's another piece to this, and this is where I want to wrap up, Doug, with this because our time is closing. But when you and I live out our calling, watch God use us in amazing ways, and then celebrate it, it's inspiring to others. And so I printed off, Alan, here the text going back and forth among your whole halftime group, which we saw in that video, your cohort group of 6 or 7 guys. And they said, I just want to read it to you. They said, congratulations, Alan, 100x impact because of your vision, hard work, integrity, and faith. Another guy said, "This is awesome. Vision and fantastic leadership coming together. So good, Alan. Congratulations. Wow, what a wonderful achievement. Very inspiring, and I'm proud of you, Alan. Congratulations, Alan. Legacy. This is a legacy, and God is smiling. Alan, your work is not only wonderful, but also so inspiring to each of us on making a big impact on all these kids' lives. Wow." And then lastly, Alan, I'm so proud of all that you've accomplished and what will go down in as the most complicated year in history. And so that's inspired those other guys to go do what they're doing, be all in for following God. And then I loved your response. You said, "Gentlemen, thanks for this special notes. It is a dream come true to have all this all come together to completion. I had a number of partners along at my side. They all had their special gifts and connections and contribution. But the Lord is the one that gets all the credit. Too many difficult paths, and it was questioned by so many people along the way. He's the one who made it all possible in such an amazing way." So doesn't that paint a different picture than just a party where there's small talk and a bunch of, drinking and expensive food? And just the richness and joy, and it just doubles the pleasure. And I've just loved watching you celebrate, not just now, but along the way. And it comes up in your heart. I can see it just bubbling up. You're just ready to cry. It's so impactful. So Doug, how would you sum up what we've learned together with about this, since you and I are not so good at celebrating?
Yeah. I think what I keep hearing is celebration is important and actually has long-term value. And it's an important skill to develop and refine to finish well. But, it won't happen without allocating time and resources, scheduling them. And I like what you say, fund it so it's an event you won't want to miss. One of the things that I've heard a lot of people talk about is celebration events are an ideal time to share stories of God's thumbprint in your life. I mean, how many chances do you get a chance to do that? And this is an opportunity to kind of set that aside. But celebration is something that's a work in progress for me personally. I have tended to kind of dismiss it and actually almost be a little embarrassed by it. But my family is helping me with that. And one of our new favorite things to do, and this is really simple, but I find it really opens up the conversation, is we ask everybody to bring their favorite beverage. And we get little tasting cups, and everybody gets a little taste, and we get to talk about why it's their favorite beverage, why they like it, maybe why you don't dislike it. But it gets a lot of good discussion because it's a nice thing everybody can talk about. As a family, we have a major July 4th family event that's quite involved, and it has become, an important part of our family. And we kind of top it off with an annual multi-family beach trip. And these take a year or more to plan. I mean, my wife is working on this summer's plans right now. But, we've learned that's half the fun.
Oh, that's good. Those are good points, Doug. Maybe we should stick those in the chat so we can remember them. So we forgot to remind people to put questions in for Alan so that we can, if we want, we can spend a few more minutes for folks that have time to hang around.
Absolutely. We would look forward to that and answering your questions, but otherwise we will wrap this up early. Lloyd, how about you? Is there you had talked about some verses in Scripture that you had come across on just how common it is for celebration. Is there kind of a closing comment while we see if anybody wants to pop in a last-minute question?
Yeah. I found in Deuteronomy 14, verse 26 and 27, it's talking about the tithe. And God says to the children of Israel to bring your tithe to the place of worship and celebrate together as a family. And then he says, if it's too far away, the place where you're assigned to worship is too far away, then, sell your tithe, turn it into coins and bring the cash, and then buy whatever your heart desires to worship and celebrate together before the Lord. And I just thought about how intentional through Scripture it is to put the time into it, put the planning and preparation into it, to put money and resources aside, to set aside money to be part of worship and celebration of all of God's doings in our lives. One of the most important things I do about celebrating is not really a big party, but it's my book of days, where I keep an artifact every day, hopefully, where I see God at work in someone else's life through me. It could be a big or small way. And I keep it in a book, and I create a book every year. And at Christmas time, when all the family is home, we go through and just pick some of those things out and then read the stories of what we've done with our giving, what we've done with the local compassionate things we've done, the ways the people that we've served have changed the world. And we celebrate. We sit by the fire and we celebrate. And then the kids talk about what they chose to give to from our giving fund, our family giving fund, why they picked that ministry, and one story. And when they tell the stories of people that, Syrian refugee kids that got educated and women that were in human trafficking, they got rescued from human trafficking, our family absolutely celebrates. And it's so much richer and deeper than what I used to think celebration was. And now I believe it's a critical part of finishing well. So, Alan, any thoughts before we wrap up? Anything you would, since we're learning from you on this?
The only other thing that I kind of thought a little bit about is, sometimes I think we think that we're owners, of companies, and I had an older gentleman tell me one time, we're really just stewards of the assets that he's given us. And, there's times when you just show up and you feel like you bought something and everything's going good. This last time, we were 1 for 25. I mean, we were getting dejected from, not being able to get something going. And we literally turned it over to, not that we weren't, praying about it, but we literally turned it over to the Lord, and he divinely, put us in the assets we're in today. And I just would say, I'm reminded often that we're not really owners. We're just stewards, of these assets. And, whenever that we approach it that way, then if we get to the point where, we're blessed through being good stewards of those assets, then it's just really easy then at that point to recognize just exactly, what he's done and give him all the glory through that. And you mentioned sometimes the celebration involves, buying yourself a personal gift, but it also, involves, I think being able to, take some of those proceeds, however you do your philanthropy, and put that in. For me, that's putting it in the National Christian Foundation. I get, it's a great joy. That's part of the celebration, is putting it in the fund. And then, we're starting to include the family more and more in, okay, here's what's in here. Where do we know of needs? How can we help others, and how can we help people hear the gospel as our criteria? And so those are some things that we continue to do as we think about the whole process.
So one last fun question, Alan, for people from other countries that may not know what a Texas wildcatter is. They're, Wall Street Journal says they're a thing of the past. I mean, that was a era. So what is a wildcatter for people that don't know the oil and gas business?
Well, I think the real term came from, back in the 30s to 50s, the true, prospecting for oil and gas. It's a very risky business, especially if you're going to truly go out and be a wildcatter. And a wildcatter was someone who literally took everything they had and sometimes it was on a very the science they had at that time. And some people, it was just like on the science somebody else had at that time, and they would go and drill a well, and from time to time you would get, you'd get a spindle top gusher, like you've always heard about in Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, and that was Titusville, but in Beaumont, where just literally oil gushes over the top. We're obviously a lot better at that environmentally now, but that's really where the term came from. People who are willing to take the risk to go find hydrocarbons, and now that we think about it, to actually fuel the world, right? It's we need to do it in an incredibly environmentally responsible way, but to fuel the world, and that's what a wildcatter was and is, and it's morphed a little bit over time because we have a little bit more science and methodology to what we do. But you can take very conservative strategies in our business, and you can take rather aggressive strategies, and it's a risky business.
So, Doug, I see there's one question there before we go, right?
There is. This comes from Rhonda, and this is to you, Alan. And she says, Alan, what would be your advice to others who are trying to figure out what their passion or mission is?
Well, that's a great question, Rhonda. And for those of you who haven't read the book Halftime, it's a good starter kit because it talks a lot about low-cost probes. And when you think that you're getting an inkling that might be something that God is putting in your path, and you go try it out, and you test it out, and pray about it, and seek godly wisdom about it. Other times, I think if maybe we're just not paying close enough attention, depending on our setup and our time with the Lord. And it's kind of like it says in John 15, it's like he said, abide in me and I'll abide in you. So if you really want to know what the Lord wants you to do, it seems to go a lot better, and you seem to figure out what he's really up to and where he's working if we are, remaining in him, if we are abiding in him. So, I would just say at that point, just make sure you got your ear to the ground, that you're paying attention, because when we get going too fast, a real opportunity, in the mission world, can fly right by you. So those are just a couple of thoughts, Roman.
That's great. That's great, Alan. It's been a joy on the journey with you. Love what the way you're being used by the Lord, not only in the oil and gas industry, but also with young leaders in your city and in helping kids with hearing loss. So it's just way to go, buddy. So thanks a bunch. Love you a bunch.
Thank you so much for all you've done.
Alan and Lloyd, I certainly appreciate you taking time this evening to discuss this. I know I'm going to be working on my celebration, and what a perfect time with the upcoming holidays. This is good prep and a good reminder that despite how things may seem, we've got to try and celebrate that it's really important. Well, Lloyd, thank you so much. And Alan, thank you so much. And audience, I just appreciate so many people that were there and joined in the chat. Just remember, we do these monthly. We have the Coffee with Lloyd series, and we also have the alumni series. So we hope you'll join us in the next live stream. So for now, I think that's all tonight. And we wish everybody a goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.